Welcome back to the Extra Zone Arcade. It's already been 1 month since the world was blessed with Sonic the Hedgehog 3. No, not that one. That was over 30 years ago. It's also been 1 week since it dropped digitally, so now is as great a time as any for me to finally talk about this movie in full. The gloves are coming off and there will be spoilers as far as Sonic can run, so if you haven't seen this piece of absolute cinema, go change that now. But before you do that or continue watching, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the great Sonic content I make. Though there won't be much Sonic content, if any, over the next few months because I'm starting a retrospective series on the mainline Super Mario games. So, if you like Mario, and how could you not, make sure to stay tuned for that. Anyway, enough e-begging. Let's get into this review of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and why it's not only the best video game adaptation, but one of the best pieces of Sonic media ever. The story cold opens on a dark and stormy night on Prison Island. Gun has been keeping the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog, in containment for over 50 years following a tragic accident. The lover of Latinas awakens and makes quick work of the soldiers, then makes his way to Tokyo where he realizes the world has changed a lot. But one thing that hasn't changed is his hatred for humans. The ones that took away his only friend much too soon. The angry Shadow causes chaos and destruction in the city, so Team Sonic is called in by Gun to help. Though the director of Rockwell isn't all too fond of these superpowered aliens running around free. So that's pretty much the intro to the movie, and wow, it moves a mile a minute. Appropriate for a Sonic movie, but I do feel like we could have had a little more time to establish where Sonic and the gang are post-movie 2 and Knuckles. Pretty much everything I just talked about happens in the first 5 to 10 minutes, so they really throw you into the deep end. That said, I could almost immediately tell they were going to do some justice to my boy Shadow. When the first thing he does is body a bunch of gun soldiers using almost the same combos from the Shadow 2005 opening, I knew peak was on the menu. And it's gotta be said, Keanu absolutely crushed it here. I won't lie, I was skeptical at first when he was announced to be the voice because I wasn't familiar with his voiceover work. Not to mention he sounded pretty stiff in the Shadow Generations movie DLC that came out just the week before. Thankfully, those fears were put to rest just as soon as he started talking. The delivery gives me vibes of David Humphrey's take on Shadow from the Adventure era, which makes sense given Keanu probably watched hours of Sonic Adventure 2 the movie Ultimate Edition 4K 60 FPS. He brings that perfect level of angst, confidence and sheer aura needed to play this character. I guess John Wick really was the right choice here. So, back to the story. The gang confronts Shadow where he not only hops on a motorcycle, but he then also kicks up a gun from the floor and starts spraying. Holy shit, they actually went there. This entire fight is bliss. From the Akira slide to Shadow driving up the building and jumping off the side of the bike mid-air, and this shot where he knocks out Sonic that looks 1-to-1 with Shadow 05. After coming to, Sonic realizes that his mirror is going to be quite the challenge to beat, and they'll need a plan. They meet up with Commander Olive Garden Walters, where we get our lore dump about Shadow and the incident 50 years ago. No arc in this continuity. Gerald and his team were working in a bunker of sorts on Earth. We learn that Shadow arrived on Earth in a comet and was quickly seized by the government, who ran tests on him constantly. So, bit of a departure from the games there, where Shadow is a purely synthetic being. He quickly grows fond of and becomes friends with Professor Gerald's granddaughter, Maria, who's tragically killed in an explosion. Pretty heavy stuff considering where the movie franchise started out, but that kind of tonal whiplash is what makes Sonic so charming. Anyway, it turns out that the commander was actually the one to give the order that sealed Shadow away for all that time. Unfortunately, and in a somewhat ironic twist of fate, an explosion happens at the Chow Garden Cafe that takes him out. Guess he'll never get to the bottom of that never-ending pasta bowl. But before he succumbs, he gives Sonic and the gang an access key to prevent the launch of a weapon capable of destroying an entire planet, codenamed the Eclipse Cannon. But it's been deactivated for some time now. A mysterious biker pulls up and deactivates the egg drones that also very mysteriously attacked. Turns out Agent Stone is back and has been taking care of a decrepit but very much alive Robotnik. He's let himself go quite a bit since the last defeat, but Sonic and the gang need his help to stop Shadow and prevent the world from falling into ruin. They head over to the old gun base where Shadow lurks and takes out Team Sonic one by one in a surprisingly tense scene. The way he just swiftly and quietly knocks them out is so cool, really goes to show that he's in a league all on his own. Meanwhile, Eggman reunites with his grandfather Gerald. He's looking pretty good for 110, and his character is pretty drastically different to the games. Where Gerald is extremely modest and level-headed, right up until the going insane part, in the games, the movie has him a lot more eccentric and standoffish. He was the one that set the egg drones loose earlier and puts on a fatherly act to goad Ivo into his sinister plan. But underneath all that is a rage that has been bubbling for half a century. The death of Maria caused him to spiral, and now it's time to enact his vengeance. But first, they gotta deal with those pesky rodents, so Shadow attempts to spaghettify them? Erase them from existence? I'm not even really sure what this thing was, but it made for a pretty cool scene. The team makes it out and informs Tom and Maddie, yes they are in this movie, of their plan to stop the end of the world. Bored sitting at home, they agree, and it's off to good old sodding London, mate. Come on down for a pint, you old geezer. Team Robotnik is one step ahead though, as the giant enemy crab mech hides in the sewers. Both teams need to get through Gun HQ's defensive barriers and get past the really light security considering this is a top secret government facility. Some body morphing shenanigans and a dance number later, it's a fight for the keycard with changing gravity. This part reminds me a lot of Crazy Gadget from SA2. Really wouldn't be surprised if those anti-gravity rooms are what inspired this scene. Director Rockwell gets the key, but Tom is able to escape and disguises himself as Commander Walters. He meets up with her and asks for the access key. She complies, and the plan is now fully underway. Or is it? Tom runs into Shadow, who mistakes him for the real Walters. The edgy-hedgy beats him within an inch of his life. Yes, this is a fun family movie for the kids, where Sonic finds him and swears upon Shadow's defeat. Unfortunately, the Robotniks now have the key, and the Eclipse Cannon rises up from under the Thames River. Sonic and Knuckles get into a pretty heated argument over the use of the Chaos Emeralds that actually looks for a second like they might scrap. But Knuckles decides he'll let Sonic deal with his anger in his own way. Now that is character development. The Robotniks and Shadow start up the Eclipse Cannon, and this is where the mask comes off and Gerald reveals his whole plan to Ivo. He wants to completely wipe out the Earth, bringing justice to the world that took Maria from him. Eggman is not pleased to hear about this, and doubly so when Gerald drops this bombshell of a line.
You're no Maria.
Meanwhile, Wade, the guardian of the Master Emerald, hands it over to Sonic, who then goes super and flies up into space. He grabs Shadow, throws him out of the Eclipse Cannon and back to Earth, where they duke it out in what I can only describe as the greatest live-action Dragon Ball fight ever conceived. Every action scene in this movie is an absolute treat, but this takes the cake. They're out here fighting like it's Sparking Zero, and the dialogue goes crazy too. Throughout this whole movie, they play up the parallels between Sonic and Shadow. They're both superpowered hedgehogs from space that came to Earth and settled in with the human family. But where Sonic found happiness and comfort, Shadow experienced intense loss and pain. One bad day and Sonic could have become Shadow. That's something I really love about this compared to their dynamic in the games. Shadow really feels like a mirror to Sonic, an actual reflection of who he could have been. They're two sides of the same coin, and it goes beyond just their abilities and looking vaguely alike as it is in the games. Not necessarily saying the way the games portray them is bad, just I really like this more nuanced take on it. It hits really hard when Shadow drops this line.
Your anger was too much. What kind of hero abandons his friends to pursue revenge? Abandons his family?
What also hits hard is Supersonic, because he sends Shadow packing to the moon for putting disrespect on Tom. Shadow is done for. Sonic's about to go in for the kill and Shadow eggs him on to just do it. Finish the job. But he can't. Sonic's not a killer. He knows the right choice is just to talk at this moment. And so they do. Sharing their similar experiences makes both hedgehogs realize that they're fighting for the same thing. To protect and honor the legacy of those who made them who they are. And no matter how bad you might screw up, there's always a way to fix it. You just have to live and learn. When I tell you that every hair on my body stood up during this moment, when I tell you that my jaw was on the floor, this might have actually been the single greatest moment in cinema since Toby and Andrew showed up in No Way Home. Not only did they get Live and Learn for this scene, but also Supersonic and Super Shadow fighting a horde of gun mechs in space with some of the best choreography for this kind of battle. It blasted me back to being 10 years old and getting to this point in Sonic Adventure 2 for the first time. As a Sonic fan of around 15 years, this moment felt like what everything was building to. All the highs, all the lows, and everything in between the Sonic brand led to this iconic team-up being played on the big screen for millions to enjoy. I felt so validated here. So why the hell did they cut in these awkward scenes of Gerald and Ivo fighting where Gerald uses a giant metal hand to spank Eggman? This didn't take me out of it too much on the first watch, but it's definitely very jarring. Anyway, Tails and Knuckles are here to help Eggman, and the three of them dispose of Gerald in the funniest and most anticlimactic way possible. But it's too late. The cannon is already set to fire at the Earth. The Super Hedgehogs use all their power to stop it hitting the planet as cool and blue as Sonic, as the rest of the team do their best to steer its course. With only a little bit shaved off the moon, the crisis is averted. Or so they think. The Eclipse Cannon's reactor is overloading, which is bad news for life on Earth. and so this is where Eggman makes his big sacrifice play. If he can't rule the world, he might as well save it. Saying goodbye to Stone just one last time, his only real friend. Man, I actually teared up during this scene. They did such a great job building their dynamic over the films, and the way they concluded that here was just perfect. Shadow takes off his limiter rings and begins pushing the cannon away from Earth so it can blow at a safe distance. And that it does, taking the ultimate life form and the world's greatest scientific genius with it. The Earth is saved. Back on Earth, Team Sonic, now just Team, celebrate another day saved, and it turns out that Tom made a good recovery after Shadow's attack. They finish up their race from the beginning of the movie, and the credits roll. Kinda funny how they completely gloss over the moon being split, but it was pretty inconsequential in the games too, so whatever. For the post-credit scene, Sonic finishes the race first, but it's now nighttime and he finds himself at the New York state line. That's when Metal Sonic pulls up, looking pretty much exactly like his game counterpart. But not just one, it's a whole army of them. I wonder if they're going for a Brotherhood of Metallics thing like the Sonic Fleetway comics. It looks bad for the original Blue Blur, until an oh-so-iconic hammer strikes them all down. That's right, have no fear, because Amy Rose is here. Now, before I talk about her more and the potential of Sonic 4, we gotta mention the other post-credit scene that reveals that Shadow survived the explosion. If Shadow survived, it makes you wonder if Eggman did too. He's always kinda had a knack for making unexpected returns, and Jim Carrey is reportedly open to returning again, so who knows? If he doesn't, I won't be too upset since they did end his arc on an amazing note. So yeah, I think it kinda goes without saying, but Sonic 3 was the best movie of the whole trilogy, and I think it's straight up the best video game movie. It has everything. The respect for the source material is unmatched, and you can just feel the passion for the story of Shadow. Sure, it's not an exact adaptation of Adventure 2, but it deviates in ways that actually add to and even improve upon the original. The tone of the movie varies pretty drastically at times. I mean, the movie that deals heavily with grief and vengeance, where the stakes are now planet level, is the same one where Sonic says... But like I said, I love those strange tonal shifts in Sonic. And it keeps it engaging for the kids, the parents watching it with their kids, and of course, people like you and I. There are plenty of treats in there for longtime fans, not just of the games but the prequels as well. They call back to lines from both movies, and the references to the games have been dialed up quite a lot to the point where we finally got some real Sonic music in here. That was one of my biggest problems with the previous films, and I'm so glad it was addressed. From the subtle city escape melody in the London scene, to Eggman's SA2 theme ringtone, to Eggman's theme from motherfucking Sonic 06 and the build up to Live and Learn, they understood the assignment fully. They knew exactly what we wanted and delivered. I talked earlier about Keanu's portrayal of Shadow, but I have to give props to the other stars. Ben Schwartz, Colleen O'Shaughnessy and Idris Elba all put in their best vocal performances yet as Team Sonic. Knuckles is a particular highlight. He gets pretty much all the funniest lines, but also has plenty of moments to shine in other emotions, like in the scene after the final battle. Ben showing Sonic's aggressive side when fighting Shadow really came out great. You can feel that anger pushing him closer and closer to being the person that put him in that position in the first place, and it's delivered wonderfully. Colleen always effortlessly kills it as Tails. She's been doing this for over a decade, so not much to add there. Tails' writing has been improved now as well, and it feels like he's been given more to do in the plot overall. As for the human characters, Jim Carrey puts in what I think is one of, if not his best performance ever. No joke. It's up there with Ace Ventura and The Grinch, because not only does he crush it as Eggman, but he's a double act playing Gerald as well. The cloning effects in this movie are top notch, and there are times where I almost forget it's literally the same guy, just in different prosthetics. There's even a fourth wall break here where they talk about being two characters played by one actor in a movie, and that was just really fun. No one can play off of Jim Carrey's mad antics better than himself, and he really gets to shine here with a ton of screen time between both Robotniks. In general, the visuals here are best in class. The CGI characters look the best they have yet, with some absolutely stunning VFX and camera work. This is a beautiful looking movie, and the director, Jeff Fowler, really did Shadow and the world around him justice. He actually worked at Blur Studio, a VFX company founded by none other than Tim Miller, who's actually the executive producer of the Sonic movies. Blur Studio were actually the ones who did the Shadow 2005 CGI scenes, so Shadow was in good hands from the very start. But yeah, so much love and passion behind the scenes made for a genuinely incredible movie. Not even just as a Sonic fan, but just in general. My friends who know next to nothing about Sonic aside from the movies loved it. My family who also don't really engage with Sonic also loved it. Reviews are going crazy for this one, and it just recently passed 440 million at the box office, making it the third highest grossing video game movie. It might even end up higher than that, not to mention the digital release, which is sure to do gangbusters. Sonic 4 has already been confirmed for a March 19th, 2027 release, so a new hype cycle begins. Before I end the video, I just want to talk about some of the potential of that movie. So, we know Amy and Metal Sonic are going to play a big role and that Shadow is returning. Eggman may or may not be back, that remains to be seen. Recently, we did just get some concept art for Sonic 3 that could have been intended for the post-credit scene. One of them depicts Eggman and Metal Sonic ruling what looks to be a very Sonic CD-inspired apocalyptic future. Another shows Amy and Fool having taken down what looks like a Death Egg robot from Sonic Forces. So, what could this all mean? It's theory time! Since this movie is looking to adapt elements of Sonic CD, I think it's safe to say it'll be a time travel ordeal. Movie 3 took us into space, so naturally the next one should be about time. Eggman, using Sonic's quill, has mass-produced a Metal Sonic army, and quickly takes over the world, also building Death Egg robots to reinforce his empire. A small team of freedom fighters in this ruined future are the only force of opposition, led by Amy Rose. They share legends of a blue hedgehog who saved the Earth from the tyrannical Doctor on a few occasions. After gathering the Time Stones, she travels back to meet the legendary hero known as Sonic, but is followed back by a squad of Metals. That leads us into the post-credit scene as we know it now. Following that, Amy recruits Sonic and the gang to fight in this war to save the future. Hoping we could potentially see Silver in here as well, since the story looks to be time travel focused, and that's kind of his whole flow. The human characters are also becoming less and less relevant to the plot, so from here on I can totally see them pretty much 100% focusing on the Sonic elements. There's a lot to be excited about and speculate, and you can be sure I'll cover it all when the movie draws closer. Maybe I'll even do a little Sonic 4 pre-write thing. Never tried anything like that before, so let me know if you guys want to see it in the comments. That'll just about do it for this video. Sonic 3 was an absolute masterpiece. In terms of video game movies, that's now the one to beat, with my only real complaint being the pacing at the beginning and end are a little fast. But hey, fast is what Sonic does best. Let me know what you thought of the movie down below. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe on your way. Next week, the Mario 40th Anniversary Superspective begins. See you there. Also, Sonic 3 is by all accounts a Christmas movie, so it has now surpassed Die Hard as my favourite one.